All right, I'm going to do something today that I don't typically do during the season. I'm going to make some in-season, sort of season-long predictions. I do a whole series of videos in the off season, June, July, August, leading up to the start of the season, where I go game by game through different teams, and this team's going to lose to these teams and go 9-3 and all that, and blah 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 blah. But I don't typically do conference championship game predictions, and I don't typically do Heisman predictions in the off season. Now, you can put together my game by game predictions within a certain conference and figure out who it is would end up making the conference championship game if it played out exactly that way. But in terms of just saying, I think these two teams are playing in the SEC championship game, I don't normally do that in the off season. And the same thing with Heisman. In fact, I really don't talk that much at all about the Heisman in the off season. I think I usually do one video a year where I rattle off like 10 or 15 names of like potential Heisman candidates for next season or whatever, but nothing real serious. In today's video, we're 2/3 of the way through the season, basically the regular season. Anyway, we've headed into November. Today is November 1st. So we've got a lot of actual data points we can go on here. And I may end up regretting this. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But I'm going to attempt to predict at this point today who I think it is that's making the conference championship game in each of the four major conferences, who I think the Heisman Trophy finalists are going to be, and who I think is going to win it. We're going to start with the Heisman Trophy side of things. Now, on the Your Season is Over video, the recap video, weekly recap video that I do every Sunday, I do update my Heisman list, but it's a small segment at the very end of the show. It takes literally 45 seconds or so to do it. I'm going to get a little bit more in-depth today. So we're going to do the Heisman side of it first. And then we're going to go and I'm going to give you my conference championship game predictions. I'm going to tell you how it is I think things are going to happen between now and the end of the season to get us to those particular conference championship games. But Heisman first. And shout out to Prize Picks. They are the sponsor of today's video. All right, make sure you check out prizepicks.com. Head on over there. Get signed up. All you need is an email address and a promo code. Make sure you enter the promo code Uncle Lou. It's one word, uppercase letters without any spaces, Uncle Lou. And they got a great bonus going on right now. If you use that promo code, Uncle Lou, and make any $5 play over on Prize Picks, whether you win or lose that $5 play, they're going to give you $50. So it's literally free money. Go take advantage of it. Support the people that are helping to support the channel. Check out prizepicks.com. And while we're over here, speaking of the Heisman, I've got three names, really four, I guess, that we're going to go with for my official Heisman finalists. And we're going to check their Prize Picks numbers for this week. And I want y'all to help me put together a Prize Picks play for this coming week using my four, what I think are the four Heisman finalists. They're all playing this week. We're going to start with, actually, one of them might not be playing. Anyway, we're going to start with Cam Ward, quarterback of Miami. They host Duke this week. Miami's favored by 20. The numbers that Cam Ward has put up this year are ridiculous. They're breaking a lot of offensive records down there at Miami. Now, what you think of Miami overall as a team aside, I understand their defense has had some shaky games, and some of us are still kind of gun shy from watching Miami poop on their own foot year after year for the last 25 years. But that aside, Cam Ward is having an unbelievable season at quarterback. The number of 300-plus yard games he's had is mind-boggling. And if we look here over on Prize Picks, 310.5, more or less. What do we think? That's pass yards. Now, we can also get it lower, 274.5. If you're unfamiliar with how Prize Picks works, here you can see 349.5. You got the Green Goblin, the Red Devil, and then nothing here. This would be their sort of normal payout. This payout would be lower because it's, in theory, an easier number to hit, over 274 as opposed to more than 310, right? Whereas this one with the Red Devil would be even harder to hit at more than 349, so the payout would be higher. I haven't had much luck on here the last couple of weeks, so that's why I need y'all to help me. So I'd like to stick to this one, but more or less than 310.5 yards for Cam Ward. Y'all can let me know. Again, they're playing Duke at home. Miami is. It's a noon game. Cam Ward, one of my Heisman finalists, predictions here heading into November. The other one, Alstovius. How do we spell Alstovius Smith? We'll just stop here. They still have this guy painted up like Michael Myers, which is alarming to me, considering Halloween is over. Boise State actually plays tonight, Friday night, against San Jose State. More than 149.5 rushing yards would be an easy, the lower payout, according to Prize Picks. 189.5 would be sort of an average payout. And we could take receiving yards. I don't want to mess with that. I'd like to do the rush yards. And again, I kind of want to go with the easier one. So are we okay with doing more than 149.5 rushing yards? Or should I do less than 189? Again, I want y'all to let me know specifically about these players we're talking about, which picks you think I should make. Cam Ward now, Alstonian Gent Smith, my good buddy out at Boise State. So Cam Ward, Altovius Gentworth, my first two Heisman finalists heading into November for this season. This third one is the one I tend to get the most pushback on. I've got Dillon Gabriel. Here's what you have to remember about the Heisman. What is our biggest complaint about the Heisman? Well, the biggest complaint generally about the Heisman is it doesn't go to the best player. It goes to the quarterback on the best team. Well, Oregon's ranked number 1 with 1 month to go. They're undefeated. They're ranked number 1 in every single poll and ranking on the planet. And Dillon Gabriel is their quarterback. So I think he's got a pretty good shot at being a finalist for the Heisman there in New York. Now, they play on the road at Michigan. Michigan's got a decent defense. I don't think it's as good as we expected it to be, and obviously their offense is non-existent. But this isn't about the game overall. This is what we think Dillon Gabriel will do on the road against Michigan. And we've got a couple of choices for his pass yards. More or less than 277.5, more than 249.5, or more than 299. I'm leaning less than 277. Again, I'm not going to lock that in now. I want y'all to tell me what I should do here. So, again, with Cam Ward, Albert Genty, and now Dillon Gabriel. Tell me what I should do. They're on the road at Michigan. They're a huge favorite, 14.5 points. One of the biggest home underdogs in the history of Michigan football, Michigan is this week. I'm leaning less than 277, but you tell me which way I should. I'm going to do whatever the most amount of people in the comments tell me to do. And my fourth finalist, the Heisman Trophy sometimes has 3 finalists, sometimes 4, sometimes 5. I'm leaning right now towards there being 4. And if that's the case, the fourth one would be my cousin, Travis Hunter. They're off this week, Colorado. Colorado doesn't play this week. They're on a bye. But right now, I'm going with 4 Heisman finalists, and those are my 4. Cam Ward, quarterback of Miami. Dillon Gabriel, quarterback of Oregon. Albert Gentley, running back, Boise State. And Travis Hunter, two-way star out at Colorado, of course, plays corner and wide receiver. Those are my 4 picks as of right now for the Heisman Trophy ceremony in December. If I had to pick a winner right now in terms of who I think is going to actually win it, I want to go with Albert Gentley so bad because I do think he's having the best season of any college football player in the country. But there's 2 things working against him when it comes to his Heisman chances. Number 1, he's a running back. And we just rarely see running backs win the Heisman, right? It's something we complain about, again, all the time, whether it's with running backs or someone else. Ndamukong Suh is probably the poster child for best player not winning the Heisman a few years, I guess about 10 years back now. But anyway, it seems to be such a quarterback-centric award that it makes me hesitant to go all in on a pick for Albert Gentsmith, the running back for Boise State. So to me, it kind of comes down to Dillon. Travis Hunter. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of negative sentiment just towards Colorado in general. And I don't want to turn this video into that. And I'm not saying I'm a part of that. I'm obviously not if I've got Travis Hunter as one of my 4 Heisman finalists. But I do wonder if he'll be able to get enough votes because of some of the anti-Deion and anti-Colorado sentiment that's out there. Plus, he also does not play quarterback. It seems like the safe bet right now in terms of picking the actual winner of the Heisman would be to either go with Dillon Gabriel or Cam Ward. Now, keep in mind that the Heisman Trophy is voted on between the last week of November and the first week of December. It's like a 10-day window they have to vote that encompasses the last week of the college football season leading up to Conference Championship Saturday. And then, of course, the Heisman Trophy presentation is usually a couple of weeks later in mid-December. I don't see any losses on the schedule for Miami. Now, if I'm being honest, I don't see any losses on the schedule for Oregon either. I'm talking regular season. It looks like right now that Miami and Oregon are both headed towards 12-0 seasons. If that's the case, then you have to consider both of their quarterbacks for the Heisman, and in this case, I am Dillon Gabriel and Cam Ward. So it then comes down to kind of a numbers thing between the two. And Cam Ward right now just has better numbers than Dillon Gabriel. So as of right now, my official pick for the Heisman Trophy winner for this season is Miami quarterback Cam Ward. Now I want to move on, and this is a lot more difficult. Shout out to Prize Picks again, by the way. Make sure you check them out, prizepicks.com, promo code Uncle Lou. It's available almost everywhere. I live in Georgia, so I can't use the other sites like DraftKings and FanDuel and that to actually bet on games. But prizepicks.com I can use and do the more or less feature on these players. So make sure you check it out. Picking a conference championship game. Now, this is obviously a lot more difficult. We're going to start with the SEC. There's obviously several key games remaining within the SEC in the month of November that are going to determine who ends up playing for the SEC championship game, right? Georgia plays at Ole Miss next week. Georgia has one loss. Ole Miss has two. The week after that, Georgia hosts Tennessee. Right now, both Georgia and Tennessee each have just one loss. Texas A&M, 0 losses in conference. LSU, 0 losses right now in conference. Texas, 1 loss in conference. Alabama, 2 losses. You get the point. There's 5, 6, 7 teams still alive right now to make the SEC championship game. So what's going to happen over the course of the next couple of weeks? Not going to hit every game. I'm going to highlight some of the bigger ones and tell you what I think is going to happen and where we end up with the SEC championship game. Like everybody else on the planet, it seems like, I have picked Texas A&M to lose this weekend on the road at South Carolina. Everybody is picking Texas A&M to lose on the road this week at South Carolina, which probably means they're going to win. That's generally what happens. When everybody lines up on one side against somebody, that team usually ends up winning. So we'll see. But let's assume Texas A&M goes there and loses. That would be their first SEC loss. Okay, I think Georgia takes care of business against Florida. I think Tennessee beats Kentucky. Alabama and LSU are off this week. Texas, I think, is off this week too. Some of the bigger games coming up. Georgia on the road at Ole Miss. Ole Miss is not the same team. At least they don't appear to be that they were the first month of the season. Once we've got into conference play, Ole Miss has struggled a little compared to what we saw the first month of the season. Similar story really with Tennessee. They do have the big win over Bama, but their offense just hasn't been the same since the calendar turned away from September, right? So I think Georgia goes on the road and beats Ole Miss, remains with just the one loss. LSU and Alabama. This is a hard game for me to pick here. The loser is eliminated. Clearly, it would be the loser's third loss. They're just out completely of everything, in my opinion. Conference championship game, playoffs, everything. Right now, I'm going to go with LSU because they're the home team. But it's very possible Alabama goes in there and wins that game. That's a hard game. In fact, while I'm sitting here right now, I'm about to change my mind. I think I'm going to take Alabama. Brian Kelly he's just let us down too many times in big game. I'm actually going to go with Alabama right now in that game. I think Alabama wins on the road in Baton Rouge, so Alabama remains with just the 2 SEC losses, Vanderbilt and Tennessee. Tennessee plays in Athens on the road at Georgia here in a couple of weeks. I think Georgia gets the win at home. Georgia hasn't lost a home game since 2019. Kirby Smart has been dominant over the Josh Heupel offense. I'm not just talking about Georgia beating Tennessee to the last 3 years. Just the Josh Heupel offense has not got out of first gear against Georgia. It appears that Kirby Smart has figured something out with that Josh Heupel offense. I know Nico's got a lot of talent, but he's not playing great. They do run the ball well with Dylan Sampson, and Tennessee is capable of winning that game, but it's in Athens. I think Georgia wins that one. You get to the last game of the season, you've got Texas and Texas A&M. I think Texas will beat Texas A&M on the road. That's going to be a huge game. I think Texas is going to win it. And if you go in and you add all that up, you end up with Georgia and Texas each with one loss. Tennessee, 2 losses. Arkansas and Georgia. Bama, 2 losses. Vandy and Tennessee. LSU, 2 losses. Texas A&M and Bama. Ole Miss, 3 losses because they're going to lose to Georgia. At least that's the prediction right now. So anyway, it narrows down, and you get a Georgia-Texas rematch in the SEC championship game. Now, I reserve my right to change my mind on that given how the outcomes go, but that's my official prediction for right now. The ACC, almost just as tricky as the SEC. You've got 4 teams right now that are undefeated in ACC play. Miami, Clemson, SMU, and Pitt. Now, Pitt plays on the road at SMU this week. So one of those teams will remain undefeated. One is going to catch their first loss. Miami hosts Duke. They should win that one. Clemson hosts Louisville. Clemson's a 10-point favorite. Could be a wild game. Could be a lot of points scored, but I'm assuming Clemson wins that one too. So you're still going to have 3 undefeated teams in the ACC after this weekend. SMU's the home team. Let's assume they beat Pitt. That leaves us with 3 undefeated teams, SMU, Clemson, and Miami. Clemson still has to play Pitt. I believe that's on the road at Pitt. If Clemson beats Pitt and SMU and Miami win out, you're going to have a 3-way tie for first place in the ACC, SMU, Clemson, and Miami. Clemson is in danger, I think, of not making the ACC championship game. If that happens, I don't. The tiebreakers are very confusing, but if you just break down the schedules of SMU and Clemson, Clemson will have a 31-point loss to Georgia. SMU's only loss would be 3 points to BYU, which looks like a really good loss now. The obvious answer here is just to go with Clemson and Miami, and while I agree those do look like the 2 best teams in the ACC, my prediction actually right now is SMU versus Miami in the ACC championship game. I think SMU could beat Pitt. Pitt could then beat Clemson. Miami and SMU would be the only 2 teams without an ACC loss. So that's my pick for right now, SMU and Miami in the ACC championship game. Big Ten. Obviously, I would rather watch the Penn State-Ohio State game before having to do this right now, but I have picked Penn State to win this week. So because of that, my pick for the Big Ten championship game has changed. It's now Oregon versus Penn State in the Big Ten championship game. If Ohio State beats Penn State, which is possible, it's going to be a great game, and Ohio State owns them. Let's be real. I don't think Oregon's losing. So I think Oregon definitely getting into the Big Ten title game. They already have a win over Ohio State. Ohio State plays Penn State this week. Ohio State then plays Indiana in a couple of weeks. So if Penn State beats Ohio State this week and then Ohio State beats Indiana in a couple of weeks, then it's cut and dry. You'd have Oregon versus Penn State, both undefeated, both in the Big Ten championship game. The problem could come if Ohio State beats if Penn State beats Ohio State and then Ohio State beats Indiana, there's a scenario where you could have 2 or even 3 one-loss teams. Then it goes to tiebreakers. But my prediction right now is going to be Oregon versus Penn State in the Big Ten title game. The Big 12, BYU undefeated. Kansas State, 1 conference loss. Iowa State undefeated. I think it's going to come down to 2 of those 3 teams. I know Colorado is sitting on just 2 losses, but one of those losses is to Kansas State. So they would need Kansas State to lose another game just to get ahead of Kansas State. And then they still have 2 teams ahead of them in BYU and Iowa State who have 0 losses. So I really think it comes down to BYU, Iowa State, and Kansas State. I'm putting Kansas State in the Big 12 title game. That was my pick in the offseason and in the preseason. I know they got drubbed on the road at BYU earlier this year. I'm sticking with Kansas State. So I think it's going to come down then to BYU and Iowa State for that other matchup. And if I remember right, Kansas State plays Iowa State coming up here in a couple of weeks. So my prediction is Kansas State will beat Iowa State. That means Kansas State and Iowa State will each be sitting with 1 loss, but Kansas State will have the tiebreaker over Iowa State because they beat them head-to-head. BYU will be 12-0. I think you're going to have a rematch, Kansas State versus BYU in the Big 12 title game. So there you go. Heisman finalists, Cam Ward, Dylan Gabriel, Albert Jitsmith, and Travis Hunter And right now, if I had to pick the winner, I'd go with Cam Ward. Conference championship games right now. I've got a rematch of Georgia and Texas in the SEC. I've got SMU versus Miami in the ACC. I've got Oregon versus Penn State in the Big Ten. And I've got Kansas State versus BYU in the Big 12. Make sure you let me know down below how wrong I am. I'm sure this was a great idea for me to do this. Check out prizepicks.com and have a good morning.